At this point, we now have to turn to what probably is the most tragic chapter in Athenian military history, not only in the Peloponnesian War, but for Athens in general. It is probably easy for students of military history to find plenty of comparisons between later military disasters and the disaster that is now about to befall the Athenians, the Sicilian expedition, 415 to 413 BC. For this video, we'll talk about some of the background that led to this and the causes that caused this expedition to be launched, and then we'll get into the details. It's actually almost a separate war of its own, and Thucydides devotes, in fact, 2 entire books, his books 6 and 7, which are actually his last complete books of his history, specifically to this campaign to show just how disastrous it was and what an awful decision the Athenian democracy made in entering this particular expedition. So now, the causes. There actually had already been an episode previous in Sicily back in 424 BC that concluded with a congress held at the city of Gela. That episode occurred because of a dispute between the Athenian allied city of Leontini and the Spartan allied city of Syracuse. The Athenians and the Spartans both sent over representatives to get involved in the dispute. However, both of them ended up leaving because a Syracusan general by the name of Hermocrates spoke at this congress in which he essentially said that all Greeks over in Sicily who did not have any real business over there should leave. That Athenians, Spartans, and other non-Sicilian cities should not be involved in specifically Sicilian politics and disputes. And so at this big congress, he called for a cessation of all hostilities for a long enough period to get all the non-Sicilians out of there. So as a consequence of his speech and the affirmative response from the members of the Congress, the Athenians and the Spartans were sent home summarily without any further resolution of the dispute between Syracuse and Leontini. So that really dug at the Athenians because now, having already lost 2 years before that, their important ally, of course, Corcyra, in the civil war that broke out there. Now we have the Athenians cut off from important supplies from the Sicilians due to this decision at the Congress to bar Eastern Greeks from coming over from the east to interfere in Sicilian affairs. So this stuck with the Athenians, but of course they were preoccupied with the war and other fronts and couldn't really respond to this at the time. However, in 415 BC, on the heels of their triumph at Milos, triumph in quotes, of course, the Athenians heard of another dispute that broke out again between 2 cities, one Athenian allied, one Spartan allied, Selinum, the Spartan ally, and Segesta, the Athenian ally. And once again, both cities called for assistance. The Spartans did not initially respond, but the Athenians did. Now, at this point, we have the fateful decision that is raised by our good pal Alcibiades. He steps up in the Athenian assembly and probably run roughshod emotionally by what happened back in 424 BC. He calls for the Athenians to expand the expedition to Sicily beyond just the petty dispute of the 2 cities to attempt to invest the entire island of Sicily, whereby the Spartans would lose all allied support over there, and the Athenians would greatly multiply the resources that they would now have available. This was, again, partly probably in response to the loss of Corcyra. Alcibiades, as well as his not-so-great colleague Nicias, had both received word from southern Italians, especially at Rhegium, that this would be a prime opportunity for the Athenians to make such a strike because they were promised quite a bit of auxiliary wealth that the Greeks could pick up if they stopped at Rhegium. So, spurred on by calls for Athenian allies from Sicily, as well as this promise of auxiliary wealth from Rhegium, and probably dug in with the previous repudiation by Hermocrates in 424 BC, the Athenians decided to make a full-scale launch against the island of Sicily in 415 BC. And as you probably already sense, this is going to be an extraordinarily fateful decision with enormous, horrendous consequences, as it turns out. I might add that word, of course, did get over to Sicily that this expedition was coming. Hermocrates, once again, at another congress called by the Sicilian cities in an emergency council, called for an alliance of all the Sicilian cities against the Athenian invasion. And although not every single city signed up, most of the major cities did. And Syracuse was to get quite a bit of assistance from other Sicilians in their desperate attempt to fend off the Athenian invaders. So this was going to, in fact, be one of the largest scale investments of the Athenian fleet into this foreign enterprise. And of course, this was exactly what Pericles had told them not to do, not to go out and try any new expeditions, trying to expand territory in any place. The Athenians now will ignore this tip from Pericles at their cost. And unfortunately, the Athenians will turn out not only to not have Corcyra to help, but the promised aid that they are supposed to benefit from at Rhegium also won't be there. So when the Athenians get out there, they'll discover that they have far less to work with than they originally anticipated. Okay, so this is the start of the expedition, and we will now start lining up those who will participate in the expedition, and then we will get the expedition itself underway. See you next video.